So if you think the last video was a stinker, wait until you see this one. Alright, so we made it to the last episode of the series. I may do a wrap-up episode, but it'll be real quick and short, I don't know. But for now, this is it. And I realized that last episode was a little weak, but this one's going to be a little weak too. For the same reasons. I lost the footage for the engine work I did. So luckily, back when I filmed this thing, I was posting on some sites like Car Domain and on Facebook. So I was able to have some still photos posted online. YouTube wasn't quite a big thing for me back then, but I was able to salvage some photos. So this is going to be another episode where I just show you mostly photos and do a bunch of talking. But I want to go ahead and put this episode out for the sake of being complete in documenting this build. Alright, so like I've done before in another video or two, just one I think, I'll go ahead and put a parts list down here for the stuff I got to upgrade the engine compartment on this truck, the things I can remember and find part numbers for. So I installed an HVC2 coil from MSD, and I also installed a set of MSD plug wires. I use the cut to length, build them yourself wires because they come out cleaner that way. And I also ended up putting a Digital 6 MSD control box in there. It did not work. It was actually defective from the factory, but since I'd owned it for more than a year, when I finally installed it, MSD refused to warranty it. So I ended up pulling that back out, but it looked good, so I kind of left it on the firewall for a little while, just because it looked nice. But it never worked properly, and I had to uninstall it. Now you do need a tach adapter if you're going to run those items in the truck. I'll put that in the parts description as well. Alright, another thing I did on this truck was I got a Pacesetter header. Now the reason I went with Pacesetter is because I'm pretty sure they're the only company making headers for this vehicle. I was able to get a blem. And for those of you who don't know what a blem is, or you've seen it on ads and you don't know what it means, it's short for blemished, and it basically means there's nothing wrong with the product functionally, but it's got scratches or dents, or if it's a painted product, like in this case it's coated, maybe there's a spot where it didn't get fully coated or something like that. In my case there was a ding in it, and it had a couple scratches, so I was able to buy it for basically about half price because of that. It was still a brand new product, it's just they can't put it in a box and sell it as new, because the person that opens the box is going to be upset about that. The other thing I did was clean up the engine compartment. First thing I did, I think, before I did any of these installs was to steam clean the whole thing. You will see some oil stains on the firewall and on the fender wells. That was something I was going to repaint when I got all done cleaning everything up. Maybe pull the engine out to do that. It's just one of those things I didn't get around to because I had, like I said before, I had that big move from Southern California up to the Pacific Northwest, and that pretty much kind of spelled the end for working on that truck. I finished a few things after I got here, but I didn't own it long past that. So when I say I cleaned it up, I did things like get rid of unnecessary vacuum lines, get rid of unnecessary components. I'm not going to go into any details about what I may or may not have done with certain components that you should or shouldn't be taking off the vehicle. Let's just say I cleaned up that engine compartment by getting rid of several things I felt I no longer needed. Let's just leave that at that. One of the vacuum lines I was able to move, though, there's a vacuum line going from the valve cover up to the brake booster on these trucks, and it's got about 14 sections of hose and a valve and a whole bunch of clamps, and it looks ridiculous considering it's only about 1.5 feet long. So what I did to eliminate that nightmare is I went ahead and just put a breather on the valve cover, and you'll notice in a lot of these pictures there's a blue breather on it. That was just because I had one sitting in my toolbox that I could just throw on there for the time being. But you'll notice in one of the pictures that I'm going to show you today that I ended up switching it to a red one that matched the air filter. And the injectors and the spark plug wires and everything else that was red under the hood. So anyway, to get back to what I was saying about the breather and the brake booster vacuum line, what I did was I put the breather on the valve cover, and then I took the brake booster and I flipped it upside down. From the factory, the brake booster port for the vacuum comes out on the passenger side of the booster closest to the engine. It comes out and does a 90-degree upturn, and then the hose comes up and off it and then goes across the firewall and then down to the valve cover. By turning it upside down, it brought it out and down, and I was able to run a piece of hose out the bottom and over to a hard line that I ran across the firewall really low on top of the transmission. I made a couple of little brackets to use the upper transmission bolts to hold it in place so it wouldn't rattle around or move. And then I found another vacuum source on the engine that I wasn't using anymore for some other components, wink wink, and was able to run my vacuum booster off of that. You'll also notice how clean the top of the engine looks. One of the reasons for that, the main reason for that, is I did what they call a wire tuck, which basically means I took the electrical harness that runs the fuel injectors and the coolant temperature sensor and plugs into the throttle body, and I took all those wires, and instead of laying them on top of the intake manifold like they are from the factory, they run alongside the valve cover on top of the intake manifold. I went ahead and I took that harness, unplugged everything, moved it under the intake manifold, and then had the plugs come up through the runners and plug into where they needed to go. So the only wiring you see on top of the motor now is just the very ends of the pigtails where they plug onto the fuel injectors and the coolant temperature sensor. So that really cleaned up the top of the engine. As far as wiring goes, I also, on the driver's side, there's a harness that runs along the fender well, and that feeds your headlights and all those front end components. It feeds the coil and a few other things. And I took that harness and the MSD tach adapter that I had to install, and I took all that stuff off of the fender well on the inside of the engine compartment, and I moved it to the outside of the engine compartment into where the wheel goes. So it was in the wheel well behind the fender. And you'll see in these pictures where I removed the front fender exactly how that was routed. I ended up bundling up all the extra wire because we ended up with some extra length of wire once I moved everything. And so luckily I didn't have to extend any wires to do this. So I was able to just coil it all up, use a factory hanger, and I also used, there's a company called MagDaddy that makes magnetic fasteners. They're really strong rare earth magnets, and you can stick those onto your vehicle, and then they just have a little loop on them that you can put a zip tie through. Those are really good for running your wiring on a car, because you can always just pop those off anytime you want, and then when you put the harness back in, you just stick them right back on. So the harness wasn't going anywhere. I had the thing 3 years, it never moved, and I never had a rock or anything come up and damage anything. The only other wiring I had to mess with was there was an intake air temperature sensor mounted to the base of the air cleaner, and when I switched to a different style of air cleaner, I had to also take that sensor off and install it on the new air cleaner. And to do that, the location it ended up in, it needed to be a little longer. And that brings us to, we might as well talk about the air cleaner. Alright, so as you can see, this is an aftermarket air cleaner. Now it's a 14 by 3, they call that, because it's a 14-inch diameter and it's a 3-inch tall filter element. These are for a carbureted engine, and they're made for a 4-barrel carburetor. They did not fit the throttle body on the truck for 2 reasons. One, the throttle body of the truck has 2 mounting posts that you put wing nuts on to hold the factory air cleaner on. All the carbureted engine air cleaners, when I say that I mean 4-barrel, all the 4-barrel air cleaners have a single post in the middle to mount the air cleaner. So what I had to do was I had to accommodate that single post in the middle. Now you can take a wrench and you can unscrew those 2 studs from the throttle body. There's some Loctite on them from the factory, so they don't come out real easy, but they do come out. So I took that out, and then what I made was basically a little bridge out of just bending some flat stock steel. Drilled a couple holes, got the appropriate thread bolts, and screwed it down. Basically made it look like a little loop going over the center of the carburetor. And then I drilled a hole in it, and it's a 1/4-20 thread pitch on an air cleaner stud for a 4-barrel carburetor. So, being as how this air cleaner has a flat top and it doesn't have a wing nut on the top of it, I had to put the threaded rod into the air cleaner lid with some Loctite, and then cut it to a length where I could stick it onto that bridge and screw it in. You have to turn the whole top to screw it in. You can do it another way where you put the stud permanently in the bridge, but then you got to make sure it's exactly the perfect length for that air cleaner to fit. And you want to be able to tighten it and have the ribs lined up correctly. So I found it worked a lot better to do it the way I did it. So we did that. The problem I had with that was I just tapped that piece of flat stock and threaded it for the 1/4-20, and that actually wore out over time, and the air cleaner actually fell off while I was driving the truck from Southern California up here to the Pacific Northwest. To remedy that situation, and I don't have a picture of this, I apologize, I actually welded a nut on the bottom of that bridge, so it had a good bite on the threads, and I never had that issue again. Anyway, you have to use a carburetor adapter. There are several different size carburetor inlets. Its standard is, I believe it's what, a 4 7/8 opening. Gee, I can't believe I don't remember that. I sold these things in speed shops for years. I think it's a 4 7/8 inch diameter base on these 4-barrel air cleaners. I'll correct that in text here if I got that wrong. So anyway, you have to use an adapter, and it's for a 2-barrel. I just don't remember exactly which adapter it is or the diameter. I got the rewashable air filter, which is that red one you see there. You can just wash those and reuse them. I said rewashable, they're reusable, washable air filters. And then you'll notice that that thing matches my valve cover. Well, that's because I painted both the valve cover and the air cleaner to match. That air cleaner comes in bare aluminum, and it's a cast aluminum piece. So it had two things I wanted to address. One, it was just aluminum, so in plain aluminum it didn't really match anything. And the second thing is, because it's cast and not machined, for instance, it's pretty wavy on the top. So if I'd have just painted it glossy, it would have had a bunch of ripples in it. It wouldn't have looked as good. So I sanded down the two halves of the air cleaner to make them perfectly flat, and then the ribs themselves had to be sanded, not just because I wanted a sanded finish on them with a grain to them, but there was actually a divot in one of the ribs and I wanted to remove that. So I ended up taking close to a 1/16 of an inch off of the ribs in order to get that flat again and eliminate that divot. And the way I do that is I took a body dolly, because it's really heavy for starters, so I don't have to push as hard when I'm doing my sanding. This is also how I flattened out the sides of the air cleaner as well. And then you take an adhesive grip, a piece of sandpaper, in this case it's 320. I want to say I used either the 320 or 400 when I did the air cleaner. And you want to do a couple things. One, just stick it right on the dolly here, fold it around, stick it to the sides, and now make sure it's flat on the bottom. Now you have a perfectly flat surface to do your sanding. And what you want to do when you're doing something like this is you're creating a grain pattern. You're creating stripes and little scratches along the top of the thing as you're sanding it. So you want to make sure you go back and forth in the direction you want all the grain. Don't go in circles or anything like that. It's not going to look right. So that's how I did that. And I did the same thing on the valve cover when I painted it to get those ribs down to bare metal. So basically I flattened everything out with the block sander, got everything cleaned up, and I always do the paint in a few stages. So for the air cleaner and valve cover on this truck, what I did was I first used primer, an etching primer, to make sure it stuck real good. And then after the primer, I sanded down the ribs. And then I put on a coat of gloss black, and then I sanded down the ribs. And then I put on a coat of Rust-Oleum spray can. It's called Black Knight Metallic. Looks like this, or at least it did when I bought it. And there is the color. And that's what gave us the metal flake on top of the black, and gave it that kind of a graphite look. And then I sanded the ribs. And then to finish the whole thing off, I went ahead and just clear coated over everything, because aluminum will oxidize. It's aluminum's version of rust, and basically it turns white and gets powdery. So you want to protect that aluminum. So you can see in these photos, the valve cover and the air cleaner came out really nice and shiny. And the air cleaner, because I had block sanded it, just looks like a piece of glass. It didn't take much color sanding with some 3000 grit to really make that thing shine. So that's what we did there. You'll also notice on the pulleys and a lot of the brackets and the brake booster and things like that, I also painted those with that same color sequence, so everything matched under the engine compartment. That brings me to another item that I painted, which is the power steering reservoir. Now, in order to clean up that passenger wheel well, I had to take the power steering reservoir off, because it's a big old tower with the reservoir sitting on top of it, and it sits over on the fender well, and it's got two big old hoses running over to the power steering pump, which is mounted on the engine. Well, I wanted to eliminate all of that, so what I did was I just took the little mounting bracket that the little nipple that bolts onto the power steering unit, it has a hose that goes onto it. I took that hose off, and then I welded that nipple directly onto the nipple coming out of the bottom of the reservoir, cut all the bracketry off of it, and I just had that little nipple basically holding up the whole way to the reservoir. Well, you can see that in this picture here. Well, that didn't last long. With the reservoir full of fluid and the engine vibrating and all that stuff, it just ended up bending and breaking and started leaking. So had to come up with a new solution. So what I did was I got a piece of, I think it was 3" by 4" aluminum box or tubing, and I went ahead and cut a section of that out on an angle that would make it sit flat when I was done. And then I welded up the bottom of it with some more aluminum and put a nipple in the bottom for, or a hose barb I should say, in the bottom of it for the return line, or the feed line I should say, into the pump, and then drilled the holes in the side and just bolted it directly to the pump where the pump returns the fluid to the reservoir. And here you can see that in action. There's an extra little screw on the bottom. That's where I drilled my pilot hole in the wrong spot. Oops. It was a prototype. I planned on redoing it again later. And didn't. I just ended up leaving it on there. But once we had that mounted, I had to put some O-rings in there as well to keep the screws that mounted it from leaking. But once we did all that, it didn't leak, and it stayed on there really nice, and it was really compact and clean. And so I went ahead and just put 6 small stainless steel screws in there to hold a cover on it, and it was good. I had to make a little gasket, so it wouldn't leak fluid. But that ended up working out really well, and it looks really clean. Now here's a picture of what I was going to do for it. I was going to take it to the machinist and have him route it out, but I never ended up doing that. So it ended up just being a flat cap. But as you can see, it's way cleaner on the engine. It eliminated all those hoses and the reservoir and everything else. So the same company I got the air cleaner from, I went ahead and got an overflow bottle, or an overflow reservoir if you will, catch can, whatever you want to call it. A polished aluminum one. Actually, I think they're stainless steel, but they're polished. And as far as the radiator goes, I also took the fan off the front of the engine. I replaced it with 2 electric fans, which was way overkill. 1 fan would have been enough. But I went ahead and put 2 oversized electrical fans in there just because I happen to have them in stock, and I just decided I might as well use them both. So I put those on there with a kit that had a thermostat built into it that turned them on and off automatically at a preset temperature. Actually, it was an adjustable temperature knob. So I installed all that, got them adjusted to where they turned off and on when they were supposed to. It pretty much wraps up everything we did under the hood. Again, I know the episode was a little on the weak side, but I did want to be thorough and complete, so there you go. There may be another short episode. I might have mentioned this before, but there might be another short episode doing a kind of a wrap-up of this thing. There was a few things that didn't get mentioned in the videos because I ran a little long, and also give you an update on where the truck is now and what's going on with that. I have some new content coming out. 3.5 new projects sitting in the yard right now. 2 I've already started on, and 2 that I am getting ready to jump into. One's an evaluation before we decide if it's actually going to be a project or not. And then I got another one where I'm going to lower a mini truck for you guys. I'm going to try and do it on the cheap, as in as cheap as humanly possible, just to give you guys an idea of how that would look. Then we have our 2 bigger projects. We have a new shop truck we're trying to put together. Turns out it needed an engine and front suspension complete rebuild. So I should say it needed a complete rebuild on both the front suspension and the engine. So the transmission's fine, but the brakes and the front suspension are shot. So we got to do all that stuff because that's going to tow our new trailer around. So that's the plan. Get the Dodge van running, get that project done. We can start hauling the trailer around with the Nissan V8 project in it. And like I said, I can roll that thing out at car shows and you guys can come over and actually look at it right up close and personal and talk to me about it at the shows and the meets until I actually get it running. So thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it, and I especially appreciate you guys sticking through it on these last couple of boring ass episodes. That's it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.